Folks, no one gets married to get divorced, and yet here I am. This is Nobody's Coming to Save You, Part 2. Today, I am living life as a happy, healthy, and whole single person. Single as a dollar bill. Single and celibate. And it has been freeing and liberating for me. It took a while to wave the white flag. Wave the white flag of surrender. It took a while after my divorce to be willing to do the work to get here. It has been a year and a half of being uber consistent. In fact, it has been the most consistent stretch holistically in my adult life. I have done the external work that all of the experts suggest. I worked on my body. I redesigned my home. I updated my wardrobe. I found new activities. I worked on my finances. Most of all, I worked on staying clean and sober. In fact, I am celebrating 1 year clean and sober today. For 1 year, I have put no mind or mood-altering substances in my body at all. It has been the best decision I've ever made in my adult life. And all of that work mattered, folks. But here is the work that no one talks about. I don't hear much of this from any of the therapists, the ministers, the relationship coaches, or the motivational speakers. What no one prepares you for is the inner work required to become holistically whole. And I don't mean whole again, because that would imply that I was whole to begin with. I really wasn't ever whole, ever. I never fully knew who I was. I'm going to keep it 100 with you. I never fully knew who I was. As a child, as an adolescent, and especially as an adult. Especially independent of the woman I had been with in one capacity or another for 30 years. And that devastating realization changed everything for me. It changed my whole world perspective. Especially in a time when I was in direct collision with divorce and a midlife crisis and the global pandemic, all at the same time. Consuming yourself with going to the gym doesn't fix abandonment wounds. Buying new clothes doesn't resolve attachment and detachment issues. Redesigning your home doesn't answer questions regarding who you are and where you are going, especially as you are aging. Going to work and paying your bills, it makes you responsible. But did anyone ever tell you that going to work and paying your bills does not make you emotionally and spiritually mature? I know, right? Nobody told me either growing up. All of that external work matters, but it only stabilizes you externally. But it does not transform you internally. Internal transformation requires sitting with the internal discomfort, whatever area that may be, long enough for it to teach you something internally. Solitude is very necessary for this internal transformation. And if you are constantly, folks, if you are constantly caught up in the busyness of life, there is no way that you are available for this individuation process. There is a difference between busyness and productivity. I've learned that you can be very busy doing a whole bunch of nothing. And that was the part I kept trying to bypass. Learning just how to just be instead of always doing. That is where the real work began for me. I have done a lot of work on myself over the years, but there are levels to this. I didn't listen to my counselor who told me that I needed to spend extensive time with myself and get to know who I was, independent of the relationship. Because mature dating, especially after 50, has very little to do with the external measurables of marketability. At this stage of life, it is not all about all of that outside stuff. It is about what's going on the inside. Can you regulate and manage your emotions? Do you have your fears, doubts, insecurities, and inadequacies in check on a daily basis? Because we all have them. But are we making sure that we are not leaking them all over the other person? Can you operate in effective communication? The key word is effective. Can you be accountable to you and as a couple? Can you say, I'm sorry when you make a mistake? Can you sit with discomfort without blowing up or shutting down or ghosting or putting people on red? Do you have any foundation of spiritual grounding? Can you operate in effective conflict resolution? Again, the key word is effective conflict resolution. Are you embodying spiritual principles in all of your life affairs? Do you even know? Steve, do you even know who you are as an individual? You. Something I noticed on the dating apps was this. A lot of people struggle. They struggle to answer a very basic question that I would ask them. I would ask them right off the rip, right out the gate, right out the door. That question is, who are you? And I don't mean what you do for work, or how much money you make, or how many kids you had, or how many degrees you had. I mean, who are you as a person? And if someone struggles to articulate that, to even provide a brief summary or synopsis as to who they are as an individual, give me an elevator pitch. That tells me a lot. Because if you don't know who you are, it becomes very hard to know what you want, what you need, or how to navigate someone else's identity as a person. When self-understanding and self-awareness is missing, it is impossible to determine your own standards, criteria, boundaries, and most importantly, your deal breakers in terms of prospective relationships across the board. Furthermore, expectations in the relationship become very unclear and very ambiguous at best. That's the kind of connections that I'm interested in now. And just so we're clear, I'm not a relationship coach, folks. I'm not a guru. I'm not here selling magic pills or telling anyone how to live. I'm just a man. I'm just a dude. I'm just a dude sharing, who's earned my gray hairs through my lived experiences. What I have tried, trial and error, what has worked for me and what has not worked for me. I am here providing my experience, strength, and hope. And I have learned that this way of dating, this way of relating, the spiritual, mature way, it is not popular. Folks, It is not flashy. And it is definitely not the loudest voice in social media. But it is honest, candid, transparent, revealing, and direct. And it is the road that I'm choosing, even if it's the road less traveled. What I have come to understand is this, folks. Mature dating, especially after 50, has very little to do with surface and superficial criteria. It is not about the person's measurements, titles, or optics. It is about the person's internal landscape. It is about the person's mental, spiritual, and emotional maturity. It is about the person's self-awareness. It is about the person's spiritual grounding. It is about the person's ability to communicate honestly, take accountability, and create emotional safety. These intangibles withstand the test of time long after those surfacey, superficial measurables fade away. I met my share of women on those dating apps. I told y'all, I one time the judge hit the gavel on the divorce. I was right there trying to fix my feelings and fill the void. I was right out there on those dating apps. I did not take the advice of my counselor initially. Some of those women I met in person. and we just found out organically that we didn't make a love connection. Like I said, I'm gonna do a whole video series on the whole thing regarding dating on the dating apps and the dating sites online after 50. And some we just didn't make a love connection. And but we remain cool and we remain connected on social media. But I did end up with about 3 entanglements over the course of 3 years. And those entanglements taught me a great deal about myself and the state of romantic relationships after 50. I saw quickly that there were instances where I was instantly triggered by something that the women did or didn't do, which sent me into a great tailspin. I quickly found out that the relationship traumas over many years had taken a toll on my psyche. There were a couple of occasions where I just broke down, crying, right in front of them. I mean, I was straight inconsolable. They were looking at me like I was crazy. What's wrong with you? Oh my God. My God. Why? Because I knew even subconsciously that they were exhibiting behaviors that I had promised myself that I was no longer going to deal with in relationships moving forward. And I was still making the bed for those behaviors, just with a different woman. Furthermore, I saw that I was still very bitter. I had to admit this to myself. I was still very bitter and resentful regarding the divorce. I knew that I had not yet fully grieved and went through my healing journey post-divorce. I saw that I had not yet healed. And I saw that there were ways in which I was taking my residue from the marriage out on the women that I had been entangled with. I saw that I was extremely jumpy. I was on high alert, and with good reason. My intuition and discernment meter is on 100 these days. I don't let toxicity, dysfunction, or drama just ride anymore. I am sure to call it out these days. I'm going to call it out immediately. I don't operate in passivity anymore in relationships across the board. But I knew I needed to call out the toxicity, dysfunction, and drama in more healthier, in more constructive ways. I can't be fighting toxicity and drama with toxicity and drama because none of it's healthy. Have to operate in more healthy coping mechanisms. Or I'm still operating in low vibrational dynamics just like the other part. So after those dating entanglements, particularly the last dating entanglement I had, I talk about this in my video. Are they bringing peace or are they taking peace? Please go back and watch that video. It was very clear to me that it was time for me to go off into hermit mode. I had waved the white flag of surrender. It was time to me to go off into hermit mode and do the work on myself. Folks, when the pain of remaining the same outweighs the fear of change, growth, and evolution, we are ready for holistic ascension. There is no saying, if you don't pass the test, you will have to repeat the class. I finally understood how my Creator works. He is trying to do the work in me for the purpose of my ascension. But I must pass these benchmarks relationally. God works through people, places, and things. He will allow the same scenarios to come into my energy over and over again until I pass the test. If I did not do this inner work, I was going to repeat the same toxic patterns all over again, only with a different name, face, and body. Before I knew what this work was even called, I had been introduced to the individuation journey. The worst meltdown of my entire adult life. And folks, it was the greatest comeback of my entire adult life. I talk about this extensively in my video entitled, Are They Bringing Peace or Are They Taking Peace? Once you start this work, you now see that the dating post-divorce, for me, it was only a diversion and distraction from the inside work. The ultimate rebound. Ultimate rebound maneuvers. I was trying to fix my feelings with other feelings. I was trying to fill the inner void with the external stimuli. The dating entanglements were temporary relief from not having to sit alone with myself. Until I realized something very powerful and very deep. I wasn't choosing women. I was choosing familiar emotional patterns. What a stark realization, man. Stark realization. Date. Different name, faces, and bodies, but the same toxic and dysfunctional patterns. There was a moment after the last entanglement where I couldn't deny it any longer. I had come face to face with myself. I saw myself recreating the same toxic and dysfunctional patterns, just in a different setting. And that's when it became clear to me. If I didn't stop and do this inside work, I wasn't going to move on with the next chapter of my life. I was going to repeat the vicious relational cycles. I was going to have to repeat the class once again. And repetition masquerades as healing when you're truly not being truly honest with yourself. These, my friends, are the vicious relational cycles. Folks, I have been trying to unplug from a lifestyle and systems that I was no longer aligned with. for about 20 years, which was one of the things that caused a great deal of conflict individually and in our marriage. There was a great deal of conflict. That was not the fault of my ex-wife. All of the things I thought was life, all of the things in which I was indoctrinated, simply was not life for me any longer. It was not her fault. All of the different sects of socialization, materialism, commercialism was no longer fulfilling for me. They seemed rather superficial and fleeting. Take the area of traveling and tourism, for instance. I'm just going to throw an example out there. Going on trips, well, for me, just for me, wherever stateside or abroad. I mean, let's just say stateside. If you've been to one state, for me, it's like you've been to them all after a while. They all started to look the same, with the exception of a few attractions. I asked myself, why am I even wasting my time anymore? Why am I spending all this paper? To do what? To flex on social media. To impress who? Social functions that provided some excitement and fulfillment now seem rather frivolous. I now approach politics and religion with a level of apathy and indifference. Not that these areas didn't have any validity, but I knew that I could now pick, choose, and refuse what I want to subscribe to as an individual. I wasn't allowing people to shove their ideologies down my throat any longer. I could think for myself now. There were people who said that I thought I was better than, and that I thought I was outgrowing people. I didn't feel that I was outgrowing people. I don't like using the term outgrowing. I was just growing in another direction. I always knew that I was a deep thinker, a very analytical thinker, and an independent thinker. I knew that I had my own ideologies and my own schools of thought. And that individuation process now allowed me to operate in it all. And it is so freeing and liberating. And most of all, I knew that I was dealing in a host of toxic, dysfunctional patterns that everyone enabled in relationships. I couldn't take it anymore. And nobody wanted to confront at all in relationships on any level. I could no longer deal with the pink elephants of drama dancing in rooms any longer, whether it's in family, friendship, or romantic relationships that everyone would make unspoken, unacknowledged, and unaddressed. Going through a lot of this right now, even coming into 2026. Painful. I did not want to engage in any of it any longer for the sake of companionship on any level. I knew that I was trapped in systems that was built on the superficial and surfacey. But I was created for so much more. And I felt trapped for many years, long before the divorce proceedings. I was stuck in between worlds. My authentic self was crying to rise to the surface. I have been growing incrementally, very incrementally over the years. Like peeling the layers of the onion I talk about. And I heard the rumbles. I seemed different. I was being antisocial. I have changed. I'm being distant. I didn't want to be part of anymore. And folks, the truth is this. I just could not participate in unconscious adaptation because I was no longer unconscious. There is a saying, once you know, you cannot go back to not knowing. You can, if you choose to, operate in this cognitive dissonance for many years and pretend that the toxicity and dysfunction is not there, whether individually or collectively. But you will eventually catch up with you. I once read self-help books that said you can unlearn the unhealthy behaviors that you have once learned. After having done some living, I find that I do not subscribe to that school of thought. But I do believe that you can put those old unhealthy behaviors to the side and learn new healthy behaviors. I could not go backward, but because of the marriage and other factors, I could not go forward. I felt like I was caught in between worlds, and it was extremely suffocating. This in part played into my struggles with addiction. I was sick of myself, low self-esteem, low self-worth, self-esteem in the dirt as a human being. I couldn't take it anymore. I finally left the marriage. But you can leave a marriage and still be incarcerated. A prisoner of your own mind. Incarcerated by mental and emotional residue. Incarcerated by addictions and vices. Incarcerated by toxic family dynamics. Incarcerated by inherited belief systems. Incarcerated by unchallenged conditioning. Incarcerated by learned behaviors and indoctrination. Incarcerated by outdated mindsets. Incarcerated by survival strategies that once protected you, but now limit you. In other words, those masks, all those masks we wore over the years. And that's the prison that most people never escape. Because those bars are internal. You can create your own self-made prison internally. You can be a prisoner of your own mind. You do not have to be physically incarcerated to be locked up. This was the beginning of the process of becoming who I truly am. Becoming my authentic self. Carl Jung, one of the founding fathers of psychology, talks about the mask we wear called the persona. He called it the persona from the Latin word for mask, worn by actors in ancient theaters. It is the version of us that we put forward to gain belonging, approval, acceptance, or validation in a particular group or culture. We all wear masks in this world. On some level, it isn't about being fake or dishonest. A great example of wearing a persona is in the workplace. It is the face that you show your boss or your co-workers in order to make that weekly or bi-weekly paycheck. Carl Jung never said that the persona was bad. He did say that the persona only becomes dangerous when we mistake it for who we truly are. Now, I will go out on a limb to say that when I was younger, it was very necessary to wear those masks. These weren't even masks that I intended to wear. They were masks that were given to me. These masks were given to me by my culture, my family patterns, my social pressure, my fears of rejection, my trauma, my survival modes, and my organizations that I was a part of. The persona helped me. They helped me in many ways. They helped me be employed, be accepted in my family on some levels, avoid conflict, avoid abandonment, navigate all those power dynamics within relationships. They protected my vulnerability. They minimized my emotional or physical risk. And they were masks that I was fully intentional in wearing for my own survival. There were some masks that I was very intentional in wearing. One example of this was during my entire school experience. I basically created a persona that helped me to keep me protected and safe during school. But Carl Jung said something immensely powerful. The more you over-identify with the persona, the further you drift away from your authentic self. For me, it was around 35 that the persona began to collapse. My soul began to wake up. I began asking myself some probing questions. Who am I? Who am I really? What are my beliefs? What are my values? What are my customs? What are my traditions? What are my ideologies? Because as I grew and evolved as an adult, I didn't feel like I was authentically living anymore. I felt like I was living based on social performances. The weight had become unbearable by the time we had become divorced. And when I got back on those dating sites and got into a few entanglements, I saw that I was going to enter the same systems of romantic relationships, only with a different name, face, and body. Again, I ended up having a total meltdown and breakdown in around March of 2024. A total mental and psychological breakdown without even my permission. And this major breakdown was a setup, little did I know, for my major breakthrough. I am now reorienting my life as a single man based on what matters to me now at this season of my life. I am making choices that are aligned with my new authentic self, not choices that are based on my prior social conditioning. Not choices based on any prior social indoctrination. What I am doing now is not retreating from life. I am reorganizing my life. I am the author now of my life book. And this is my new life chapter. I am choosing relationships, romantic or otherwise, based on alignment, not based on availability. I am choosing peace over performance. I am choosing depth over diversion and distractions. I am no longer trying to fit into systems that were never designed for who I've become. And that is not bitterness. I'm just better, not bitter. That is not being cynical. I am just the most conscious and aware that I have ever been in my adult life. And that, folks, is the epitome of clarity at this season of my life. I now get to determine how I allocate my time, my money, my space, and my energy. I no longer have to engage in activities that I do not resonate with. I engage in activities now based on who I am now and who I am becoming. You will find that society largely determines what is important and what is not important. But I do not move to the beat of the drum of society any longer. I no longer move to the rhythm of what society deems is in, or what is trendy, or what is moral. I march to the beat of my own drum as my own individual. I move to the rhythm of being an independent thinker, not having to rely on any social systems to determine how I think, act, or behave. When you individuate, you break all of the systems of the shared framework of all of these patterns that held those frameworks together. And for the most part, these patterns regarding these systems were unhealthy, at least unhealthy for me. I introduced a few videos back. It's not you, it's me. This is especially true for me. It's not anybody's fault. It's me. I have changed, grown, and evolved. I am in the third quarter of my life. I am now looking to cultivate new relationships based on where I am headed, not on where I have been. I went through my dark night of the soul experience. Ooh-wee! The death of the old self, which birthed my new self. I am no longer living in limbo with myself. I let go of who I have been in order to be who I am capable of becoming. This is the part of the journey that isn't very popular, that inside work, the road less traveled. There is no applause. You won't cultivate a following, a crew, or an entourage doing this work. You won't get many clicks. You won't get many likes. Check it out. You just won't be sitting at the cool kids table. But you will learn how to live without betraying yourself. Because after divorce, after loss, after collapse, after the relationship casualties, after the relationship collateral damage, no one is coming to save you. And once you stop waiting to be rescued, you will finally start rebuilding your life on your own terms. So, continue being the best version of yourself today, and then doing the work, the inside work, to get even better tomorrow. Feel, deal, heal, protect your peace. This is GBIC, Relationship University, the Relationship Problems channel, where we find relationship solutions and get better together. Thank you so much for hanging out with me this long. Be blessed, everyone.